Hi, Barry. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, love. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm so excited too. I have listened to your podcast. I followed you on Instagram for a really long time and I've been cycle syncing for a while. I'm excited to dive into it, but before we get too into it, if you want to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
who are you? And what you're all about.
Geez, who am I? It depends on the day. It depends on
Right.
the phase. I'm actually in my menstrual phase right now, so I'm really
Ooh.
in this I'm exploring who I am. But
Yeah.
for those who don't know me, my name's Berrion Berri, but they call me Berry. I'm a women's health coach and fertility awareness educator, and for the last 5, almost 6 years now, I have become the poster child for all things related to living aligned with your menstrual cycle and optimizing your life in sync with your cycle. Whether you're dealing with hormonal imbalances, painful periods, other diagnoses, I basically always come back to the menstrual cycle and I say, this is our blueprint. And I help you figure it out for your life.
Oh, I love it. And I've learned a lot from you. There's so much to dive into with this. Just to like kind of get started, I know what I think is really important through a business lens is the cycle syncing. And I think
Yeah.
it's not as known as some of the other menstrual things. Do you want to kind of dive into what cycle syncing is? What are the four stages and going from there?
Yeah, so cycle syncing is actually a practice that was created by a woman named Elisa Vitti, and it's the practice of aligning your life with your menstrual cycle. I actually started utilizing one of her books called Woman Code back in 2019 to transform my cycle. And at that time, that was literally the only book I had ever heard of or knew that taught about cycle syncing. Here we are several years later. She's got a second book. There's a lot more. But my bread and butter is the business aspect of the menstrual cycle. So basically, I want you to look at the menstrual cycle as a blueprint. There are four very specific phases. The first phase being menstruation. This is when you're on your period, the uterine lining is shedding. And for those of you who are like, I need to know how long, it should last about 3 to 7 days. This is subject to change based off of ovulation, but let's just say everybody has a 28-day cycle. Your menstrual phase is days 1 through 7. Then we have the second phase of your cycle, which is the follicular phase. So, post period, pre ovulation. This is when your hormone levels are on the rise, specifically estrogen. You're feeling good again. The energy is a little bit higher. And this is really going to be days 8 through about 14 of your cycle. Then we have the ovulatory phase, which, believe it or not, is only a phase for about 24 to 32 hours max. That is, I know, everyone like
Why
hates
can't it
hearing
be
that.
if I could just feel the same during ovulation all 30 days, it would be great.
Yeah, that would be great, but then we wouldn't be women. We would then be men, basically. So, with that being said, ovulation is the third phase of the menstrual cycle. It is the main event and it happens midway through the cycle. So, it can happen on day 14, but it can also happen on day 15. This is when there is a surge in your estrogen, the luteinizing hormone, testosterone. This is when you're literally feeling on top of the world like, I can do it. I can launch this business and then some. That is what you're really feeling. But then, so just after ovulation, we get into the fourth and final phase of your cycle, which is the luteal phase. This is days 16 through 28, basically, if we're just going to go based off of days. And this is where you start noticing a lot of changes in your personality, your energy, your mood, but that's also a reflection of the changes in hormones, right? So that is the menstrual cycle as a body blueprint. But let's talk about this and extrapolate it for business because that's what we're here for,
For
right?
sure.
So, phase one, if you're a business owner, menstruation is your ideation phase. This is the time where research shares there's 25% more connectivity between the right and left hemispheres of your brain. So, you want to capitalize on that. This is when you're brainstorming in the shower. And it's like, even though your energy levels might feel a little bit lower, your brain has this capacity to really maximize and generate ideas. The second phase of your cycle, the follicular phase for a business owner, I think this is really all about action oriented, detailed planning. And that's because we're now seeing an increase in the hippocampus activity. And so now that activity paired with your energy is like, let's get into the details. Let's roll up our sleeves. and let's get into the grunt work. What is the grit that we need to kind of follow through on? So I want you to think about maybe the things you need to order in order to launch the next product, or maybe some processes that need to be updated and refined, your SOPs and different things like that. Ovulation, the third phase of your cycle. As a business owner, this is your communication. Okay. This is your execution. This is your energy. Now, I always tell people, even though ovulation is technically such a short period of time, you feel that energy for at least 3 to 4 days after you ovulate. So capitalize on it. Take the action, do the thing, follow through, whether you are pitching to new investors, pitching to different clients, whether you are onboarding new clients, interviewing people, onboarding new team members, anything that has you like talking and on top of things. This is what you're doing on during ovulation, and a little bit of that early luteal. Then our fourth phase, our luteal phase. So let's just say this: the moment you notice someone sneeze has irritated you, okay, you're in the late luteal phase of your cycle, right? The moment you just feel like, oh, like this person is breathing near me, and like you're just irritable, that is your sign that you are in your late luteal phase. And as a business owner, you're in evaluation. This is when I say, honestly, if you don't have to talk to people, don't. like and if you are talking to somebody, let it be the person who can hear the hard things or have the hard conversations. And the reason we're doing this is because during ovulation, your prefrontal cortex really expands and wants to connect and like communicate and like just be that girl, have the main character energy. But the second you're done, your brain actually says, joke's on you. We're going to go into nesting mode, basically. Even if you're not pregnant, your brain is just so primal. And it's like, we're going to go from very allocentric and focused on the external world to being very egocentric and focused on me, myself, and I. So I always tell people, as a business owner, just evaluate, just reflect, do the analysis. Now, I understand as a business owner, we wear a lot of different hats, whether you are the content creator, the team manager, you're doing a lot of different things. So once you understand the phases at a high level, you can then structure your week based on the phases in like the activities. But I'm going to shut up because I feel like I just word vomited.
No, I love it. I'm
I
like
just wanted
scribbling
you to know.
notes over here. Oh, that's so good. So these four phases, what do you do? I think there's probably people in I talk about hormones a lot because I have PCOS and kind of like back and forth, loosely diagnosed with PCOS. And I have kind of talked about through my journey. I got off of birth control, I guess like 2 Octobers ago now, which is wild to say. And I've been on the process. PCOS came after I came off of birth control just because it had been suppressed for so long. And I really now feel like I can feel those four phases. I'm like, oh, there we go. Like your breathing is a little too loud. We're in the luteal. Here we go. What do you say for people that don't really feel those cycles yet, where they're like, I really feel 100% the same, or maybe if they are on birth control and it's kind of all zoned in one, do you still feel like people feel those differences?
So there's two things I would say. First and
Yeah.
foremost, if you feel like if you're not on birth control and you feel like you can't notice the changes, be real, okay? Sit yourself down and get really still. No, you cannot convince me that you don't feel the changes
I
in
know.
PMS. Like you can't what? I see it
Tell
happening
me.
in like I see it happening in kids sometimes and I'm like, oh
You're like,
child.
oh, child, you
Like,
need some tea.
ooh, you're how old? You're 12? Ooh, girl. Like, okay. So as an adult, I need you to sit yourself down first thing in the morning before you even get out of bed. And I just want you to check in with yourself. If you are
Yes.
the kind of person who's like, once you're up and going, that's kind of how I am. I'm just going.
Mm-hmm.
Before you get going, I want you to sit with yourself and just kind of tune in and think about what am I feeling today? Like emotionally, what is my body feeling? Because if your body is feeling light or heavy, that's often going to be associated with where you're at in your
Yeah,
cycle.
for sure.
And also understanding your personal capacity. Say, what is my capacity today before you even get out of bed? If you know that your personal capacity to maybe execute on something today is a little bit lower, then I would encourage you to kind of think about where you are in your cycle, because our capacity to do when we're in the follicular and ovulatory phase is through the roof.
Yes.
But the moment we're in that luteal phase, right, our capacity to do is like, I'm existing, right? Like, it's like, hi, I am here right now. I'm here, but I'm not. So that's what I would say to the person who maybe feels as if they just don't know. I would also say, check your panties. And the reason I say that is because we have cervical mucus that comes out of our body, the discharge coming out of our body. That's also going to say a lot about your energy levels. And we can
Yeah.
talk about that if you want, but like those are simple things. Now, for the people who are on hormonal birth control.
We need to have a chat.
So before I even get into this, let me just say I am here to inform you and not to offend you. Okay. So take what you need, leave what you don't. But I'm also like a very straight up person. I don't like to fluff it up. When you're on hormonal birth control, you're not having a real period and you are actually flatlining what you are feeling and experiencing. So for you, there's actually not this cyclical change if you are on the pill specifically. If you are on the patch, the ring, the IUD, the shot, what am I missing? The implant. There's a lot of hormonal birth control out there. If you are on a progesterone only based birth control, you may notice these fluctuations, but more often than not, I've noticed people don't notice it. So, what I would say do is to grab your calendar. Okay. This is my notebook, but we're going to say it's a calendar. And I want you to actually, when you are bleeding, because a lot of people experience a withdrawal bleed and they say it's a period, but it's not a period. If you know anything about the research, it's just not a period. Okay. Mark it in your calendar. Okay. Simple. Every 7 days, do a shift. And that's because I've learned over the years of teaching this, people have a hard time dealing with the nuances when they're first getting started. So give yourself a week in the menstrual phase, give yourself a week in the follicular, give yourself a week in the ovulatory phase. I know you don't want to, but your ovulatory energy often feels like the early luteal phase. The luteal phase is like 2 weeks long and it's like, right? Like, I don't like that. Like, I hate it here. So I always say, like, hey, give yourself that week of ovulatory energy and then a week of PMS energy, and just see how you can change your behaviors, your patterns, maybe even monitor your own thoughts. And if you really a baddie, add it to your Google Calendar.
I did that a couple weeks ago. I was like, come on, I'm going to put it on here because
I put it on my Google Calendar and people think it's ridiculous. They're like, there's so many period tracking apps. I'm like, yeah, but when I pick up my phone, like right now, I can swipe over on my phone and you can see
it
I'm on
tells
my
me.
period. So, given a day where I'm not in my app, where I'm not tracking, it's on my calendar. So I'm aware.
Yeah.
So put your period on there, your ovulatory phase, and your PMS phase, you're good to go. Does that answer the
Yes.
question?
It does. I love that. And I think it's a really great place to start just because then you can kind of even you get the reminder to start seeing how you're feeling, as well as it allows you when you are planning out as a business owner, planning out what you're doing for the next couple of weeks, like don't launch something when you're on your menstrual phase. I made that mistake before where I was like, oh my gosh, like I got to be high energy. I'm launching something this week. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't feel very high energy. I don't feel like being on whatever sales calls or interviews or going live on Instagram. You need like starting to plan some of those major things. I found that that was super helpful.
Yeah, and here's another trick that I like keep in my back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
It's called two for me, two for you. So when I'm planning my business stuff, like I have to be honest, after 5 years of this, like I've got a flow. And so I already know how I work. And I'm like, okay, I can actually ignore some of this right now because like
Mm-hmm.
I'm on my period right now, but I'm also launching something right
For
now.
sure.
But
Yeah.
I'm launching it my way because I know the second I'm off my period, it's showtime. It's
Yeah.
like a different thing, right? So, two for me, two for you is essentially 2 weeks of For me, it's lower energy, internal focus, and prioritization of self. Two,
Yeah.
for you, is 2 weeks of higher energy, higher output, focus on the external world. That one thing is kind of what I have taken from this practice of cycle syncing. And listen, I was militant about it. Like, girl, you couldn't get me on a podcast interview if I was on my period. You couldn't. You couldn't pay me.
Yeah.
Because at that point in my journey, I had to do it like that in order to really understand how it works. Now, I'm just like,
You're
yeah,
like, I got this. Well,
like
and you're
you literally,
balanced, which makes such a big difference is when you
yeah.
actually have balanced hormones and your periods aren't as terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I can function like it's day 2 of my period and I feel like so great. I
Yeah.
don't have any pain. And to be honest with you, I actually have not eaten. Oh no, I ate breakfast at 6 a.m.
There you
So,
go. You got it.
like it's time for me to eat again. But before it was to the point where I'd be in so much pain, so
Mhm.
crampy, so bloated, so fatigued that I had to keep eating. Now I'm like, oh, our
Yeah.
blood sugar levels are stabilized, our energy is on, our focus is on. But this is
Yeah.
also the only thing I'm doing for the rest of the day. Like
For
I'm
sure.
chilling after this
I'm
too.
hanging out. Yeah.
I mean, that's the perks of owning your business, but also working in sync with your cycles. Like you can stack your day how you choose
Yeah.
based off what kind of business you have.
For sure. I love that. And what do you say to people, especially when they're starting with this and they're trying to just be like, they're trying to be mindful, but they're like, I can't take 2 weeks. Like, I feel like 2 weeks is a lot to be able to just look inward. Like, I feel like I need to be outward. What do you say to that kind of idea?
You can't or you won't. Okay, so let's keep it. Can we
Yeah,
keep it
I love it.
positive?
Let's
Keep it
go.
real. Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's what I love to challenge people to do. I want you to kind of look at the different tasks in your business and assess what is a high energy task and what is a low energy task.
Mm,
Something that is high energy, I get, but it should be your top priority. If you are on your period and you know something is going to be high energy, such as onboarding a new team member, that is one of the most exhausting things I
yeah.
have ever done. Like, it's like, do you have to have so many questions? Like, you're great
Yeah.
at like, like it is hard onboarding a new team member or onboarding a new client or rolling out a new project. But I also want you to push that energy to the time of day that you are on the most. And then those low energy things, if you can save them for like when you're in your luteal phase or when you don't want to talk, then save them for then. I think often what we don't do is like, as business owners, we have a hard time identifying passive versus active task.
Yeah.
We think everything is urgent and
I'll
important.
do it all. Yes.
It's not. It's actually not. Like, so we have to like kind of check ourselves and be willing to say, this is an urgent task. This is going to need my most energy, my focus. It's an active task. If it's a
Yes.
passive task, you definitely could probably do that at around 5:30, even if you want to not do it around 5:30. It's part of personal responsibility, but ownership as a business owner.
Yeah, and I think a lot of hormones, business ownership, everything in general, and it's just a good life skill to have is being self-aware of being able to like tell your own emotions, tell where you're at. And I'll have like a list of things that I'm going to do in my luteal menstrual when I don't really take too many calls. Like I have some of that where it's like, okay, I'm gonna like analyze, look at some of my numbers, look at some of these things, and like make some of the little adjustments on my website or making small things that are a lot more behind the scenes. And I think active and passive tasks might be different per person. Like a lot of my audience is they're creatives, they're like creating products, they're artists, where to them, like that creative flow might feel a little bit more passive, whereas the active stuff is creating content. And to the next person, that might be totally opposite. Do you feel like they are different for person to person of like what you should do or how you're feeling?
I 100% think they're different for person to person, but that's also why I purposely utilize that terminology because
Yeah.
what's active to me is not maybe active to you. Like, I
Mhm.
have to be honest with you, podcasting for me, as involved as it is a passive energy task for me
Yes.
because
Mhm.
I could sit here and talk all
All day
day
long.
about my expertise, right? I could do this all day. So, this is actually passive energy. I'm on the receiving end
Yeah.
of questions, even though I'm giving answers. So,
Yeah.
that's passive for me. And I would argue most creatives would be like, girl, that's an active energy task if you ask me.
I
But
know.
for me, this is my flow state.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes when you're in your flow state, it can actually feel more passive than active because you're so present with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so for a creative, like let's say for instance, give me somebody you can think of off the top of your head. Tell me what they do and what they create.
Yeah, a lot of my clients like create products. So you like the candle maker, like they'll,
Okay,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. So for a candle maker, for this is literally me taking a shot in the dark. I don't actually know
You're
what they
fine.
do, but
Yeah.
like we're gonna get creative, right? Okay. So for a candle maker, the active task could be making the candle. The passive task could simply literally be shipping it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what goes into candle making. I see the wax melting on TikTok and I'm like, oh,
Alpha
that's really
Force.
cool. You
Wow.
know, like I see like the TikTok compilations of things and I'm like, oh, that looks so peaceful.
That is fun.
But, you know, maybe an active task is showing up to market where
Yeah,
you're going to be with your customers and very front facing. That I would argue is an active energy task.
for
And
sure.
you know, you have to be on. And sometimes those markets are going to be when you're on your period. And you know what? That's okay because you already knew this in advance. And so there's no excuse not to show up. And listen, I'm a big fan of giving grace. But I also think we've gotten to a point where people don't know the difference between doing what it takes and like burnout. So everything feels like burnout. Like, no,
Yes.
go get it. Go get it. And I say that with love, but
I
seriously,
know,
go
I
get
hear
it.
you. Yeah, and I think there is a lot of that where yes, we can when we can choose our tasks. And I say this too. I'm like a big part of my framework is like the freepreneur lifestyle where it's like we have balance in our life. You get to choose, you get to be structured when you want to be. So when you don't want to be, you don't have to be. And I think that that's something with this as well is like when you have the flexibility, when you have the freedom to be like, okay, what do I want to do today? You can be a little bit more like, okay, today's not the day for that. But when some days we're inevitably going to have to do things when we don't feel like doing it. And I think you still have to kind of push through that and have tools that help you when you are through that.
And also do it when you're excited about it too.
Mm-hmm.
So you sent me a DM yesterday. We're
Yeah.
on a call today. Okay. Because when I saw your message yesterday, I was in the flow. I was ready to go. And I was like, you know what? I actually have the capacity to talk
Yeah.
tomorrow. It actually works in my calendar great. And I don't want to put this off till next week because you know what? Next week, I might be like, girl, bye.
Yeah. Don't feel like that today.
Like, and it's nothing to do with you. It's just me being honest with
For
who
sure.
I am and how I show up. So because I was on yesterday, I was excited yesterday. I was like, bring that same energy today. I'm feeling good, looking good. Let's go.
I love that. And I do think that's a big part of it is when you are excited, do it. I think that's a really good place to go. So kind of switching over to like balancing your hormones, because I think that's a big
Yeah.
piece of this as well. If you are out of commish for 2 weeks of the entire month, it's kind of a brutal reality to have. Where do you start when people are trying to balance? Like they do have the crippling cramps or they do have some like terrible, like I know for me, I don't have painful periods despite my possible PCOS. I have just like my mood, my energy is like tanked by noon every day. Where do you say, maybe not every day, but you know, when it is during those times, where do you say for people to start on the balancing train?
So, first, I always challenge them to shift their perspective about balancing.
Mm.
So, hormone balancing is a really cute marketing term, but can I be honest? It is the biggest crock of bananas out there. Here's why your hormones don't actually balance. When we look at the menstrual cycle, estrogen is dominant in the first half and progesterone is dominant in the second half.
Mm.
So, biologically, we are quite literally hormonal
Yeah.
and we're designed to not be balanced. That's how we are designed. I always say hormonal by nature, empowered by choice. So
Mm.
that is the first thing I do is I just let people know like the idea of achieving balance in hormones. It's like it's just a lost cause kind of.
Yeah.
There is an optimal range. Don't get me wrong, there's an optimal range, but true balance does not exist because at any given point in time, there's over 50 hormones rising and falling in your body.
That's crazy.
So, okay. So I just like to tell people that from like a scientific lens, but if we were talking about your period, specifically medicine, just
Mhm.
like, okay, we're going to fix her up. Here's exactly what I would do. The first thing I would have you do is drink an adrenal adrenal cocktail every morning.
Mm.
Reason I would do that is because more often than not, cortisol is out of check as a business owner.
Yeah.
It's just something that we've learned to live with. Stress, cortisol, high, like
Yep.
we've learned to, it's our state, it's our baseline. So I would say adrenal cocktail for energy sustaining throughout the day. So it's half a cup of orange juice, half a cup of coconut water, and if you're feeling real bad and bougie, go ahead and add in some like Himalayan salt, some Celtic sea salt, get it going. Okay. This
Yeah.
is to support the adrenals. From there, I get really practical. Proper hydration, remineralization and supplementation, nutrition optimization, and nervous system regulation.
Mm.
Now, I'm not going to leave you guys hanging with these like fluffed up terms. Let's get real.
Yeah.
Filling your Stanley up 3 times a day, that's great. That's not what I mean when I say proper hydration. Okay. I know you guys are like, oh,
Like
yeah.
families, come on.
The audacity. It's good. Don't get me wrong, right? But sometimes that can lead to overhydration. So proper hydration means that your urine actually looks like lemonade when you go pee, as opposed to completely clear.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously we don't want it looking like these yellow pillows I've got back here. Okay. Like we don't want a mustard situation. So that is a sign of proper hydration. Another sign of proper hydration is if you take the back of your hand and you just pinch the skin, okay, and you notice that the skin kind of goes back into place really fast, that means you are properly hydrated.
Oh, good. I was like, oh gosh, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
If it goes down really slow, you need some water. You thirsty. Okay. But also, I always tell people if you can start adding a tea into your routine,
Yeah.
whether it be red raspberry leaf tea for women with PCOS, I know spearmint and peppermint teas are really good. I've been obsessed with hibiscus tea with
Yeah.
red raspberry leaf. Those are really going to support your cycle and your hormones. Okay, so that is proper hydration. Remineralization and supplementation is very specific based off of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But at a baseline, I believe women specifically need more magnesium
Mm.
because magnesium is the first thing to go when we're high stress or high anxiety. As entrepreneurs, as small business owners, we already know what it is. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, curveball today, shocker. So getting more magnesium in is going to be really important. Personally, I like to change up my supplement routine. I am always trying new things out, and I really don't feel like I can just give blanket advice
For sure.
except for magnesium. But I will say this, if period pain is your problem, there is one supplement and you want like quick relief. There is a supplement I have sworn by for 3 years, I think almost 4 years now. It is the PMS and period support supplement from Semaine Health. When I say elite, I am not joking. Like, and I am a supplement snob. Like, if
Yeah.
your supplements have not been third party tested, if they are not clinically proven to actually do what they say they do, I don't want it. I don't touch it.
Don't even touch it.
Because I understand that that's also an industry, right? And it's a very
Yeah.
lucrative industry. So prove to me that your supplements are good. And Semaine, the team at Semaine, they have done that. But I like their PMS and period support supplement because it's plant-based, but it is so like when I say quick relief, it is unreal. I was the girl who was popping 3 Midolls a day and having Motrin 800. Okay. That's how bad my pain was.
Yeah.
That's how imbalanced my hormones were one time because I couldn't function on my period.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wake up on my period and I'm like, oh, you're here? Hi, how are you? Okay, let's go about our day. Let me pop a cup in and I go about my day.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about supplementation. That is something I really encourage people who need quick relief. If you need it, that is where I would go. You can find it on their website. You can find it on Amazon, Thrive Market, Target. No, they're not paying me to say this. I just really love this product and I try to get everybody's hands on it. For nutrition optimization, listen, y'all. Listen, you know better. You know you need to be doing an anti-inflammatory diet, okay? So that you know better. And I will share the link with you. You can share my nutrition plan. It is literally designed to help you eat in sync with your menstrual cycle, better periods, boosted fertility, happy hormones. It's a 28-day nutrition plan that is a game changer. But I know a lot of you are on the internet already, and maybe you're like, I like my free recipes. So let me help you. Okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to realize that it's not about the nuances of the grocery list. Okay. There's a lot of grocery lists. Let's be real. Some of those grocery lists don't have everything we like on them. One. Number two, they can be very limiting. And number three, they're not always the most budget friendly grocery list. Okay. Like why are wild blueberries $15 here in Michigan? Make it make sense. I live in Michigan. We have blueberries, bro. Like what? So I always say protein, healthy fat, fiber, baseline. And when I say fiber, let's get a little more specific, right? We're talking about our starches. We're talking about our complex carbohydrates, but more specifically, fruits and vegetables. When I say Roy G. Biv, your produce. I've never heard somebody else say this, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I came up with this literally in the summer. I've never heard somebody say this as it relates to eating in sync with your cycle. But what I've noticed is on my period, I reach for things that are red and orange in terms of produce. When I looked into research, it's because of the nutrients your body needs. So in the menstrual phase, red and orange. Obviously, dark leafy greens are always great, but red and orange if you're trying to add a little bit of spice to your life, okay? In the follicular phase, we are going for yellows and greens, and that's also going to carry over to your ovulatory phase. The second you know you are done ovulating, the second you know, like I'm doing another grocery store run and I'm probably going to be PMSing soon, I want you to switch to blue, indigo, violets.
Ooh.
Okay. The reason we're doing this is because those colored foods often have a lot of the micronutrients and minerals your body needs as it's preparing to release. So we just want to prep the body in advance. And listen, I'm not saying you only eat this way. I'm just trying to simplify this process because not everybody goes to the grocery store every 3 days. Sometimes people with kids like be meal prepping, like the moms on meal prep. I'm like, yo, you're a champ. And
You
I'm like a
are.
part-time stepmom. So I'm like learning how to do this. And I'm like, this is intense. Like, why are you still eating? Stop. Like,
You're like, that
so
takes
I like to be,
time.
yeah, I mean, I like to be real about it because some people do one big grocery shop a month. Some people do it every 2 weeks. Some people
Yeah.
go once a week. I mean, we go like every 3 days because it's just convenient where we live. I'm like,
Yeah.
cool. I have more space in my fridge to not be overwhelmed, right? But that's what I would say in terms of nutrition optimization. And the last area is nervous system regulation.
Mm.
Now, when I say nervous system regulation, I know you guys are like, what is that? And why does it sound so deep, wonderful, and spiritual? Like, I'm not about to do trauma release. And listen, that's great. Okay. You can do your trauma release, you can do your breath work, but nervous system regulation is simply getting present in your body, getting your body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. Okay. So we want to go from a sympathetic to the parasympathetic. I might have said that. No, I'm trying to remember like which one is fight or flight, which one's rest and digest, but you're getting out of the sympathetic and into the parasympathetic, if I'm not mistaken. It's as simple as going for a 20-minute walk. It's as simple as just saying, you know what? Before I reply to this customer who has been irksome, I'm going to take 60 seconds to close my eyes and breathe. Again, we're telling our bodies that we're safe. We're telling our body that the cortisol doesn't need to be high right now and that it's okay for us to relax. That is why we do nervous system regulation. Now, yes, you can get really deep with it, but we're on a podcast, one. Number two, I've already talked way too much. But number three, I have always been a fan of simplicity because I believe simplicity yields efficiency and that will yield sustainability. As a business owner, that's what you need when it comes to your wellness routine. So, proper hydration, remineralization and supplementation, nutrition optimization, and nervous system regulation. That is literally my blueprint. Okay. I just gamed y'all up. If you didn't catch it, play it back.
Rewind, watch again. I'm excited to try that morning adrenal cocktail because I'm all for all of the drinks. It sounds so good. That's some really awesome information. I think there's so many people out there. It still shocks me sometimes when I talk to people that have like no idea about hormones just because I've been so in it. Like for like years before I got off of birth control, years like
Yeah.
the year and a half after, I was like really doing a lot of research, and I just feel like it's everybody knows it, and really everybody should, because it really has changed the game in so many ways. When we kind of talk about practices to track these different cycles and how we're feeling and things like that, we talked about adding things to your Google Calendar. We talked about like, just really writing down how you're feeling in the morning. Do you have any other like kind of key practices that you really like to
Yeah.
have people do with like as a business owner, things like that, that when we are busy, a lot of people are busy, but
Yeah, so I think one of the best things is to have a cycle tracking app on your phone.
yeah.
In addition to Google Calendar, I always tell people whether you have an iPhone, use your Apple Health app. I don't know what's on Android, so sorry guys. I literally
Gotta
don't
be
know what
something.
their free
Yeah.
cycle app is, but there's an app I love called Thermometer.
Ooh,
And honestly, I have used it for the last 4 years. It just makes living aligned with your cycle really, really easy.
yeah.
They do a great job. Like there's a free version and there's a paid version. I used to have the paid version like when I was starting out. Now I just use the free version because I'm like, I got this. Like,
Got it. Yeah.
you know, but it is worth, I think it's like $49 a year for the paid version. It's worth having. It's a fairly accurate app and it will provide you with like extra education. It will say
Yeah.
like these are some people who are also experiencing the other symptoms. So it's like this community.
Oh,
Uh,
that's fun.
this is what you should be focusing on nutritionally. This is why you might be feeling irritable this day. Like I think it's a really good functional app, and I will say it is very, very accurate. The only time the app will miscalculate is when you have a weird cycle. So
Yeah.
December to January, I had like a 34-day cycle. So the app told me, hey, your period's going to come 6 days
Prior.
from now. My
Hmm.
period showed up yesterday. I knew it was showing up yesterday because I track my cervical mucus, my cervix
Yeah.
placement, and my basal body temperature. So I was like, shit's coming earlier.
Yeah.
Like it's coming earlier than what this app is saying. But like I do think that's important to know because like so many people trust the apps, and while the
Yeah.
apps are phenomenal resources, you don't want to just use that as your form of tracking. Just that is something to add to. And as I mentioned, cervical mucus, cervix placement, and basal body temperature, that is what I use. I use the symptothermal fertility awareness method
Yeah.
as my birth control method. I have used it for the last 6 years.
Hmm.
And y'all, I'm almost 30. I've never once been pregnant, so I know it works. It is foolproof if
Yes.
you are careful. Okay. So like if you out there, okay. If you just out there like that, that's on you. That's not a me thing.
That's
Okay.
not, yeah, that's
But
not a system thing.
yeah, so just know that that's available, and I'll send you the link for my guide on that too. But
Yeah.
I think ultimately Google Calendar, Thermometer, the Apple Health app, they make life easier. I know a lot of people are into the Aura Ring.
I have the
um
ring. Yeah.
I haven't really gotten off into that. And that's just because I'm still like, what's up with the EMF situation, guys? Like, and this is just me being me. Like, this is like,
Yes.
there's one that's recently released called the Evie Ring, and it's
Mhm.
specific to women's health and tracking your cycle. Even that, I'm like,
I know they have released the EMF report, and I have a friend that's like super into EMFs and hormones and everything, and she said that you can turn it on airplane mode, and it's still tracking when it's on airplane mode, and then you basically like turn it on and it'll sync. But I just
I
ignore
don't trust that like that.
the I've
I
just
have
had poor
questions, and
EMF at
whenever I
this
have
point.
questions,
Yeah,
it's best that I just like keep my mouth shut sometimes. And so that's like one of those things where like
for
I
sure.
know a lot of people love the Aura Ring, and I've never used it. I don't really have any issues with the Aura Ring. I just know it's a
Yeah, it's
great
not your system
resource
you've
people
used.
like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it for me, listen, the Aura Ring is for the big ballers. For me, I got on Amazon, got this little thing
Oh,
for like $25, paid
yes,
for my app, and I've been good ever since.
for
And
sure.
no,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
have to
definitely
charge
get
it.
that. Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
there's no this is the same battery that I got 4 years ago in this, and it
yeah.
has remained. So like for me, I'm like,
And
Cool.
I know the Aura Ring is totally a luxury because I was just like actually taking the temperature in the morning. I just felt like my temperatures were all over the place. And maybe it was my thermometer that I had. I just felt like it wasn't, but like the first month I had the Aura Ring, I felt like I could totally see the temperature changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a fun kind of, I felt like really starting to take my temperature was a great system to like start really understanding what phases I was in because I could see the spike and the drops and all of the stuff. It was really
And it
cool.
brings awareness to you.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, that's
Every
was one
day.
of the most important things is like, how do you get people into that rhythm that are like, no, I don't know. Start taking your temperature in the morning and
Mhm.
just tracking it, whether you're charting it or you're using the app. You'll start noticing those
Yeah.
changes, those rises and fall. And I know you don't want to add anything else to your morning routine, but I'm still invite you to do it anyways.
It's like 30 seconds. It's good. And you're
Look,
like partially asleep during it anyway, so it really doesn't
because
even.
you have to take it at the same time.
Yeah.
Anyways, like I literally have to keep a thermometer by my bedside.
Yeah, me too. It's like immediately upon waking, it was like, whew, it's like halfway asleep. There we go.
Yeah.
Well,
My
Barry,
puppy knows what time to wake up. Like he will hear me reach over and he's like,
you're
outside,
like,
let's
it's
go.
temperature
Yeah.
time. Oh, I love that. Well, Barry, this has been so helpful. Do you have one last kind of word of wisdom for everybody that's listening? Some kind of practical tip, practical tool, or just like a good word of wisdom that you're like, this is what I kind of live by. And we'll close it off at that.
You know what? Yes. And I'll keep it short and sweet. If you're a woman, I want you to start working like a woman. Stop working like a man and start working like a woman. Utilize your menstrual cycle to your advantage.
Yeah.
Use it when you're setting your goals. Use it when you're manifesting your dreams. Use it when you're taking action. Use your cycle as the blueprint, as the compass, and go get it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so excited. This was so good. I like took a bunch of notes when I'm brainstorming, when I'm detailed planning. I'm so excited. Barry, where can people find you? Where, and I'll put all of the links below, but where are you on the socials?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm literally everywhere as Berrion Berri. Honestly, just type in Berri. You will find me everywhere. I am
The only
TikTok,
Barry on
Instagram.
Barry anywhere.
I mean, somebody has Berrion as a first name, and this guy won't get rid of the handle because he says it's his name. And I do not believe him. I'm like, you don't look like a Berry. Like you just don't give the
Can't
energy.
be, yeah.
But you can find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Berry on Berry. My podcast is actually called Happily Hormonal.
Love.
So you can find the phonetic spelling of hormonal, and you can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. But honestly, just look for a period inspo. I'm sure you
You'll
will
be
see my
there.
face. Yeah, I'm sure you will see my face.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Barry. This has been so good.
Thank you.